Can we do a quick fire?
Yeah, that was the cut out.
That's why I paused. That was the cut. That was the cut.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes, fire. Quick fire.
Yeah, super quick
We
fire.
did one of these before, I seem to remember. I think I fucked it right up. Anyway.
Well, you've got 5 minutes, so
Listen, mate,
it's your
okay.
fault.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, great. Best advice you ever remember receiving?
My dad, who was always very ill, had probably 5 or 6 heart attacks before he died. He was the one that told me, don't waste a second of your life. That's about the only advice he ever gave me, but it's the best advice I've ever had.
And the worst advice you ever remember receiving?
The worst advice? Oh, Christ. Oh. Do you know, I can't remember, because I have this thing about anything that was bad that's happened, it's automatically wiped off in my mind. Because it's in the past, it's irrelevant to me, because I only ever look forward. So whilst I can appreciate things like the best advice, if it's worst advice, it obviously involves some pain, and I've had therapy to have that all removed from my brain.
What's the best business deal you've ever done?
So many to mention.
The best.
The best business deal is washing Maurice Blow's car in Loughton and getting 10 shillings instead of 5 shillings. That's when I felt that was like a popcorn moment. Business deal, the best business deal ever. Signing Steve Davis up against a lamppost in 1978 in Blackpool. And if he hadn't signed, I'd have had him up against a lamppost. Because his dad wanted him to carry on as an amateur. And I was determined. I thought, no, you've got to roll the dice. You've got so much ability. You've got to find out how good you are. You have to turn pro. So the best business deal. And it was the only contract. That's 1978. So that is 43 years ago. That contract was for 3 years. I haven't had a contract with Steve Davis since. And I've now managed him for 43 years. And he's still my best friend. And that's better than any contract you sign.
Amen. What's the worst business deal you've ever done? What went wrong the most?
See, again,
this is good. I mean, we need to learn from this. Just remove all negativity.
I'm just really thinking, you see, even when I did bad deals, somehow or the other, they ended up great. I don't know why. I've got quite a lot of property in Romford, and I bought this house off the council, and I had it valued at 2.2 million. It's in the middle of Romford. I had some land, I had some buildings in the middle of Romford, and this was next door, and it looked to be exactly the right spot for future developments. There used to be a pub in New York, a Guinness pub in New York, that was in the middle of 2 high-rise, and this Guinness pub went for hundreds of millions because it had a pivotal spot, you know. So I bought this place for 2.2 million, and I owed the bank millions at the time. I was hoping to get it. I bid 1.1, had it valued at 2.2, and I got it for 1.1, and then said to my advisors who'd valued it for 2.2, go and sell it, and they couldn't sell it for 500. So it was a disaster, and I had to add it on my overdraft. It was like, oh God, where am I going? And it just showed me that lesson that, Barry, you went for a short-term profit. That's not you. It's just I've told you before, this is not how we operate. But anyway, took it on the chin, 16% interest. The world and his brother was killing me. 1988, 2 years of my life. And over the years, you know, things got better. I repaid the mortgage and all that sort of stuff. And then, would you believe it, I ended up getting planning permission for the centre of Romford for a whole tower of flats, offices, everything on this land. It made a fortune. So, God smiles on me.
Amen.
Amen to that.
What's the best event you've ever put on?
Oh, do you know, I'd have to say that, now people will criticise this because the World Snooker Championships at the Crucible is something really, really special. But the Crucible was there before me, so I can't really take the benefit. The big boxing events have been special, you know, and obviously Nigel Benn, Eubank too, we've already discussed. But the reason I can't take credit for that is because Eddie has surpassed me with Froch Groves and AJ 90,000s, you know. So I can't say that's my best one when someone else has done much better. So I've got to look at something that has really got my handwriting over completely, and no one can say I've done better. So that puts me straight at the World Darts Championships at Alexandra Palace, a sport that I was very, very fortunate. Again, when you talk about best deals, there's a program just on best deals, because each one of them has been pivotal in my life. Davis signing a contract was the best deal, but very close behind that was acquiring control of the Professional Darts Corporation, acquiring control of the World Snooker, you know. Now, the World Snooker Championships, because it was at Circus Tavern with 800 people in Purfleet, paying 37 grand prize money, to move that sport to Alexandra Palace, 85,000 people, sold every ticket, prize fund 2.5 million, darts player winner getting 500,000, and to feel the warmth in that room when every one of them stands up chanting, stand up if you love the darts, and we've all had a good few beers as we should. That is probably my greatest achievement.
Love it. I'm not going to ask about your worst event because you won't remember it, so I'm going to move on from that one.
Well, my worst event's Michael Watson. I know I will remember that. I mean, there was an event where the previous fight, I thought Eubank Watson won. Michael felt he'd been robbed. The British public felt he'd been robbed. So it was a natural rematch. But it didn't sell. So it lost a load of money. And then on top of that, this design, I mean, Michael gave Eubank a boxing lesson for 11 rounds, walked onto one punch in the entire fight, and ended up in the state, you know, dreadful. And the resilience of him is probably the greatest battle I've ever seen anyone fight. We talk about my problems, I mean, they're insignificant in comparison to the battle that Michael Watson went through. I was there when he first moved his index finger, and that was about 2 years. You know, this man is a total legend. But the worst day, the worst experience, the worst event was the night that Michael Watson got injured.
Who would you say the best talent you've ever worked with is, and why?
It just comes back to the same favourites, really, doesn't it? Steve Davis, because he changed my life. It's simple as that. I'm sure I would have been successful in almost anything, because as you can see, I can talk the hind leg of a donkey. And I'm quite smart, you know, I know I'm not an idiot, but Steve Davis changed my life, signing him and him winning the World Championships. I think Eubank changed my life in the boxing, gave me a champion, gave me a leverage, gave me a platform. You know, and then I think, you know, different things in my life, discovering poker in Atlantic City when Lennox Lewis fought Andrew Galata. I made a shed load of money out of that, you know, and it was great fun, and I love playing myself as well. You know, buying the Euro Pro Tour and watching these golfers come through what is effectively Division 3 of golf, watching them go on and win on the European Tour, win on the US Tour, get in the Ryder Cup, and know they're graduates from our little tour is really satisfying. Yeah. So there's a whole host of things, you know. Perhaps creating the world's only live fishing event, so bizarre that it's still there after 27, 28 years. You know, as you get older, the longevity of events, things don't last unless they're good. And, you know, and one-off events like Fishermania, I think when I'm 6 foot under or wherever, when people talk about Barry Hearn, they will talk about boxing and snooker, and a certain degree of people will talk about fishing or things like that, you know, because it's whatever's relevant. I mean, what we've become is the king of niche sport. Yeah. It's not football. Don't even try to compete. But we can dominate all the niche sports and do a good job for niche sportsmen and women and fans of niche sports that perhaps weren't serviced by the existing TV platforms. Today's world is different with streaming, isn't it? Because there are so many platforms. why there are so many podcasts. I mean, where were podcasts a few years ago?
Yeah.
You know? No, didn't exist. And yet they're very useful weapons in terms of media awareness and creating interest in different attitudes and parts of life.
Do you have one person or talent that you work with that was just hard, really hard work, kind of worst to work with?
Blimey, where do you start? I mean, I had lots. I mean, there used to be a promoter called Mickey Duff who wasn't everybody's friend, nor mine, but he used to say smart things. And one of the things he came out, he said, if you want loyalty in boxing, buy a dog. And that's probably right. You see, the trouble is with boxing is you fall in love with the fighters. You know what they go through. You watch them practicing doing a job that you wouldn't do for a lot of money. And then you see them when they've been beat, or you see them after their career, and they've got the scars of war, but they don't have the assets of their endeavours. Yeah. But that also means that the fighters are obviously always looking for extra, a few quid extra from anybody, and contracts and things like that are just the beginning of the conversation. As Don King once said, negotiations begin once a contract's been signed. And that's the world we're in. So I've had lots of fighters that have disappointed me. They know they are, they don't even have to be mentioned. But we can talk about Steve Collins and people like that, that took my love and never repaid it. Whether that makes them right or wrong, that's for others to judge. In terms of, you know, other people, no, I mean, generally speaking, I think if you are fair with people, most of them will be fair with you. Sport is a short-term career, so you always must understand, you know, that people have got to look after themselves and their families, and sometimes that won't agree with what you had in mind.
So this show now, because we're on pretty much every channel, we're on TikTok and Instagram as well as just the audio version. It's called The Disruptive Entrepreneur. And I have this quote, if you don't risk anything, you risk everything. So these will be the final two questions. So what's the greatest risk you've ever taken in your career?
I can't even think, when I do something, the risk element has been accepted before I do anything. The only people that take risks are people that do spontaneous actions. Stupid people, you know? People that, I call them fur coat, no knickers. You know? They look good, but they've got no fucking idea what they're doing. And there's a lot of household names out there that would fall in that category. I like to give the impression that I'm an East End barrow boy. But I've got to tell you, I'm super smart. I don't make mistakes. I don't make decisions unless I've evaluated every side of the upside, the downside, the risk reward on my endeavour, either financial or time or emotional. Everything is categorised, analysed and acted upon. And if it fails, it's not because I took a risk. Because once I take my decision to proceed, there's no such thing as risk anymore. There's success and failure, but there's not risk.
And the word disruptive, the disruptive entrepreneur, what does the word disruptive mean to you?
Love it, love it. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We go into situations that other people haven't been into, or we go into situations with a different attitude, but we go in to disrupt on purpose. Disruptive is not a bad word, because disruption can be a good and positive side of life and business. Because sometimes you need to disrupt to get the real value out of any commodity or any product or any service. So for example, if I'm going into a new sport, which is perhaps governed and controlled by one of the old amateur bodies, I am considered disruptive. But who benefits from that? The answer is the participants benefit generally more than anyone else, because we will commercialise in a better way or manner than the existing incumbents, because they don't have the experience or the knowledge, and they're only interested, like when we went back to our traditionalists against casual. The traditionalists are only interested in the sport. They don't give a monkey with the sportsmen and women. They don't give a monkey if it makes a profit. They're interested in the sport. It's a bit like a football fan. They don't care if the club's in debt to £1 trillion as long as they're winning. They're not interested in the long term. They're passionate, they're traditionalists, they're ignorable. You move on to the people that really count, it's the other 95%. So to be disruptive is to be positive and to create good by change. That's what we do.
I love that. And I want to sneak one last one in because I think it's really important. What do you think your legacy is? What would you like your legacy to be and how would you like to be remembered?
The most satisfying moment I have now in my reflective years is looking back on people that I've had a relationship with and seeing what they've learned from that relationship, how they've developed themselves and where they are now. And sometimes it's a sad story and sometimes it's a happy story. Sometimes people have gone down, we all have choices in life which road to go down. There's a bad road, there's a good road, and there's a road that's pretty average. There's always 3 roads. When you go down a good road, you change your life. When you go down an average road, it's pretty boring. And when you go down a bad road, you generally get banged up or something, you know? But I love looking back on people that have been successful, and I hope that what we've taught them in a manner of association is be useful to them. About hard work, saving money, making sure you don't extend too much. So my legacy, my favourite legacy would be 2 things. One is, for the people that work with me, there was a very good writer who wrote about me 20 or 30 years ago. And I don't know why, I can't remember his name, must be old age, but you would know his name. He's a top journalist, sports journalist. And he wrote that the epitaph on my tomb should be, "Here lies Barry Hearn, equally at home on the cobbles as in the boardroom." I'll have that. As far as legacy in sport is, I'd like to think that we have helped people change their lives without barriers to entry, where people can come from anywhere, be it any religion, any colour, any sex, and benefit from sport. Because as a sports fan that wants to be entertained, I applaud excellence, but I believe excellence should be paid for, and that should change people's lives. And I've got a few of my ex-fighters, ex-snooker players, some of them done very well, and I hope perhaps we've been a part of that process.
Barry, I've had so much fun. This was as good as the first. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, mate.
Good luck.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this interview and you want a lot more content just like it, before you do anything, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. I'm Rob Moore, host of the Disruptive Entrepreneur Show, and if you don't risk anything, you risk everything.